Hey Piedmont 7, it's Kathleen, and I'm here today to talk to you about Chapter 9, which is in Advancing Differentiation. And this chapter focuses on critical thinking, which is developing reasoned thought with our students. So to begin, the first thing we need to do is have an understanding of the definition of what critical thinking is. It is effective conscious thinking, it's organized, it's open-minded and fair, it's well-reasoned, it does require advanced levels of that brain energy. It seeks to generate reasoned solutions based on evidence and facts. It's the ability to analyze and criticize those higher level thinking skills in Bloom's taxonomy. It uses both inductive and deductive reasoning. So now that we have the definition, let's think about what it isn't. And what it isn't is it's not disorganized, it's not biased, it's not narrow, it's not unconscious. It's not like creative thinking that is shaped somewhat by randomly seeking multiple answers to a solution, to find a solution. So moving on, how do we develop critical thinking strategies with our students? And here are some examples that you can use. The author suggests by providing them with graphic organizers, templates, and designs to frame their thinking. So getting them to use a spider diagram to start branching out their ideas, using a Venn diagram or a T-chart to compare and contrast, using sequencing and prioritizing graphics to find the order of importance. So specifically in reading, how do we develop these skills? And critical thinking while reading helps students monitor their own understanding of the information, recognize the author's point of view, and take into account assumptions and generalizations. And they do this all by utilizing their own personal experience with the information. And some ways we can do that is have kids highlight important information, annotate on the side as they're reading, reflecting, having them evaluate arguments. The reader definitely needs to be careful when they're doing this and reflective and kind of distance themselves from their own emotions and beliefs and figure out those of the author. To develop critical thinking skills in writing, well, it really can't be isolated from the critical thinking in reading. These two kind of blend together because students must keep in mind that judgments, interpretations, arguments, or opinions will need to be supported not only through quality writing, but through effective thinking. And ways they do this is by editing their own writing, doing a peer review of each other's writing. You can develop this by even doing free writes, and I know I've had a lot of success with that. If you haven't used that strategy to get kids to start critical thinking and writing and going beyond, kind of pushing them to write more. In math, I found it, my experience has been it's easier to develop these skills in math. Students need to consciously articulate mathematical meaning, make decisions, solve problems, draw conclusions, use logical, deductive reasoning, and recognize known and unknown facts. So critical thinking strategies should be embedded in your instruction on a consistent basis in math. It definitely lends itself there. And you can do this by, building in some logic, math puzzles, having estimation, doing the magic squares, having kids check assumptions and facts, justify their answers. Even I put up here a picture of a Rubik's Cube. That's another great example of building these skills. But on a daily basis, what can we do? So here are 7 daily critical questioning strategies that we can use with our students at any time in the class, or even, little things like when you're packing up, like it doesn't have to be a lesson behind it. But using analogies with our students, this example, how is a car like an idea? They say to try using an abstract concept along with a concrete one, which is a person, place, or thing. And at the end, you can even try and have kids come up with them and not you providing them. Analysis of point of view. So how might the author's point of view change if he or she were? And here you could change the setting. You can change their age. Like, would that author be the experiences, how would it be different if they were older or younger? Here you have to be careful with bias too. Complete and incomplete, finding missing numbers in a sequence, just putting up some kind of pattern up at the board and having them find that what's missing. Learners need to have a solid foundation of both experiential and factual information to do that. The next one is webbing, and webbing is great because the students start seeing like a ripple effect of an issue. So getting them to unpack their idea and unpack their thinking, and a cause and effect chart, as long as any kind of webbing would help them do that. Hypothetical thinking, what would happen if? So start putting out some ideas to get them to use logical questioning and abstract thinking. So for example, I put up here what would happen if schools didn't open in August. Like, what is our system going to look like? That's getting them to use what they have now, the knowledge that they have, and start thinking and making a hypothetical on if it doesn't. Reversal of thinking. This is how your opinion on a climate, like what is your opinion on climate change? But then they have to write about the opposing opinion, getting them to put their feet in somebody else's shoes. That I find difficult for the young ones to do. And the last one is application of different symbol systems. This one I think is the most fun, like the kids having them act out a math problem, because it gets the kids, this really helps, they say especially boys or visual learners, because they get to step outside their comfort zone and start thinking of ways that they can transform the idea. And arts integration is a great way to build that. Moving on to critical thinking tools. And by tools, these are fluid activities to get things to think beyond themselves and consider multiple factors when forming their responses. PNI is that positive negative thinking. And here, if we use the example of a circle, so tell me something positive or something good about a circle. Well, they might come up with things like a lollipop or a smile face. What's negative about a circle? Think of a circle and they might think of a sad face or a pothole in the road. And what's interesting? So what is that interesting about a circle? And that's that eye. And here they might come up with something that it's difficult to draw a perfect circle without tracing something. Or a circle is a symbol for the meaning of life. So that's ways you can do the PNI and getting them to start thinking critically. The CAI is consider all issues. So if you were, let's say, given $1 million and you had some stipulations, how would you go ahead and spend that $1 million? The PL is a priority ladder. And that kind of speaks for itself. You start justifying and prioritizing a list to solve math problems or any kind of problem. But you could put out like, if you were deserted on a desert island and here you can bring 10 things, what is your priority going to be? Synthesis 3+1, well, that one you're probably familiar with, and all it does is add, tell me one thing you learned, two things you want to know, a question you still have. But here the +1 is add an analogy. So to have the students summarize their ideas using a metaphor or a simile, and that's just adding the analogy at the end. And STO is structured thinking organizer. And for this one, it's just giving them, again, that structure or some kind of organizer for them to organize their thoughts in. This was a great idea to start getting kids to think critically, and it's adding maybe like a bulletin board, but getting the kids to realize that there are no easy answers and that there's not an answer for everything. They kind of come to us, especially when they're younger, thinking we know everything. And I think it is important for them to understand that everything doesn't have a perfect answer. And starting to get them to understand that we need to seek out more information and think critically. So knowing that there's no easy answers to everything is knowing everything or having all the answers is impossible. Finding solutions can be difficult, and they do take time, and that we have to develop their perseverance in doing so. They suggested creating a wall space or a bulletin board entitled Things We Don't Know or No Easy Answers, and students can have the ability to start putting things on this bulletin board all through the year. They can place sticky notes with their ideas, their thoughts, their questions, and you pull them down and discuss them, whenever you have a chance. So that I thought was very clever. And I'm going to leave you with this quote from Albert Einstein, and it is, "Education is not the learning of facts, but training the mind to think." And that's basically our job, and that's what we need to do. And that's it for Chapter 9. Thank you.